Hey guys, so before I start the video, I just want to let you all know that I started streaming. I have a Twitch page, so any of the videos that I will be putting out of builds, you can probably see those being played on stream live. So if that's something you're interested in, you can head over to twitch.tv/legendofbagel, and you can watch live gameplay of those builds. Thanks guys, and enjoy the video. What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I will be bringing you guys another build guide, and today I'll be showing you guys the Marauder Scrapper. With PvP leagues in full swing, I decided that it would be nice to put out a video helping some of you who might want to be trying to get into Scrapper. And this is just the standard meta build that's being played right now on MetaBattle. You can find that if you go to metabattle.com. And yeah, let's get into the build. So let's start off with gear. So for weapon, we're going to be running the new hammer, which the engineers get when they spec into Scrapper. And for sigils, we're going to be taking the standard DPS sigils of air and blood. And for the amulet, we're going to be taking Marauder, and for rune, we're going to be taking durability. So, basically it's just a standard Marauder build. You'll be surprised at how much toughness this build has, or how much survivability it has, and the runes of the durability really do help with that. The extra vitality, toughness, and boon duration they grant is just insane for the survivability of a build, which is why you see it being ran so often with revs and rangers and mesmers. So it's just a really good rune in general, even if you're running something like Berserker or Marauder Amulet. Alright, so let's get into traits. So with the current variation I'm running right now, we're going to be speccing into Alchemy, Inventions, and of course Scrapper. So let's start off with Alchemy. In Alchemy, we're going to be running Protection Injection, which will give you protection every time you get CC'd. And as you can see with the extra boon duration we get from durability runes, it's actually quite a bit of protection. If you get CC permanently, you basically have perma protection. Next we're going to be taking self-regulating defenses. Backpack Regenerator isn't as good of an option here as the auto Elixir S because we only have one kit and you're not going to be on it that often, or if you are going to be on it often, the benefits you get from Elixir S is far outweighs the benefit you get from Backpack Regenerator. And there's also a new Scrapper trait that basically takes the role of this, which I will go over later when we go over Scrapper. And for Grandmaster, we're going to be taking HGH, which you should all know by now. It grants might on elixir usage, and the minor trait removes condies. So this removes a condi, this removes a condi, and this removes two condies. And of course, this removes a condi. So it's a lot of condi removal on top of your healing turret. So things like Revenants and Necros aren't that big of a problem if you manage those clears wisely. So next we're going to be going into Inventions. So this is a big reason why this build is so survivable with Bunker Down. But first we're going to take Automated Medical Response, which is a really good save me trait, or a get out of jail free trait. When you're about to go down, this is going to pop, and this at the same time. So you know that when this pops, your heal is probably going to be up. Next we're going to be taking Mecha Legs for the increased movement, because we're not going to have Perma Swiftness. We're going to have close to Perma Swiftness with the Elixir B toss and the regular Elixir B. But it's just good in general to have, because it also decreases the Mobilize, Cripple, and Chill durations. Especially with Chill being a damaging condition now with Necros, it's really useful. And of course we're going to be taking Bunker Down, which every 2 seconds is going to drop a mine, which I'm pretty sure boon strips, which is really good. And what they call a bandage, which is just like a med pack, which grants regen and a healing for 500. So that's basically around 250 health per second, plus a little bit of regen from that regen boon that it gives, and you'll see that your survivability goes up like crazy, which is one of the reasons why, even though this is a Marauder build, it can survive so well under most situations. Lastly, we're going to be running Scrapper. So in the first minor trait, we have Function Gyro, which you, depending on who you have targeted, you can either stomp or a res from a distance. And I'll go over uses of this later on, but it's just really useful. So for this, you can either go Stabilization Core or Recovery Matrix. I found that this build is so survivable that you don't really need the extra protection, and the free stomp or res that you get with this trait, which gives stab on function gyro use, is just invaluable. So next, we're gonna go Decisive Renown. Whenever your function gyro finishes its job, it's gonna grant you might and super speed, which is super good, especially in fights, big team fights, when you're the first person to finish off an opponent. You get super speed, which couples with the next trait really well. This is Rapid Regeneration. So this is the trait that's going to take over Backpack Regenerator. It's going to grant you 105 health having Swiftness on you, and 470 health having Super Speed on you. So as you can see, this grants 4 seconds of Super Speed, so that's around 2k healing just for using your function gyro. And you're going to have about 105 healing pulsing non-stop. And also, the Slick Shoe Stun Break grants you 5 seconds. So that's a little bit under 2500 healing just for using that skill. Last Miner is the durations of stuns you put out and are coming to you are affected. So as you can see from the tooltip, incoming stuns and dazes are decreased by 25, and outgoing stuns and dazes are increased by 25. This is really useful because a lot of your hammer skills do stun, and when comboed, it does daze. So that's just a good extra boost of CC. And lastly, one of the reasons why this build is so survivable, Adaptive Armor. So it reduces incoming Condi damage and increases toughness whenever you're hit. As you can see, it has a maximum stack of 5. So you're going to have 300 toughness up basically all the time, and 20% less damage from Condis all of the time. It's a crazy trait, and it's almost a no-brainer to take if you're going for survivability. Alright, so next we're going to be going into utility skills. So for healing, we're going to take Healing Turret, of course. Not really much else is viable. The gyro is pretty niche, and it's not really good for our purposes. We're going to be running Elixir Gun, which complements HGH really well because it provides 3 extra elixirs that are on pretty short cooldown and an extra stun break. I'll go into that a little bit more in detail later on, but just know that Elixir Gun is very pivotal in this build. So next we got Elixir B, which is just a standard thing to have around nowadays. The extra might that it gives and all the boons that it gives are really useful, and especially with the power creep in this meta, retail is actually pretty good. It deals substantial damage when you're not doing anything, so it's always a plus to have around. And of course, Toss Elixir B gives stab, which is really useful, I find, against Dragon Hunters with their constant CC, their Dragon's Maw, their Longbow 5. So I usually save that for mid fights, or say maybe far point assaulting when there's a Dragon Hunter guarding. And for our final utility skill, we're going to be taking Slick Shoes, which is really good for on-point fighting, as it stuns your opponent for a really long time if you use it correctly. It allows you to land a lot of your big damaging moves really easily. And of course, the 2-belt skill is really useful. It's a stun break, so you have 2 stun breaks for those pesky gravity wells. And it gives you super speed, which, as I mentioned earlier, is basically healing for 2500. So for the elite skill, Sneak Gyro, this has so many uses, and it's probably one of the most insane skills that the engineers got this patch. So to start off with the tool belt skill, this is really good against Mesmers and Thieves. Just use this, and they become revealed if they're stealthed. Just take note of the 600 radius, which isn't that small, but it's not as big as you think. For the actual uses of Sneak Gyro itself, I will be going to detail with that later on, but just know that it's an instacast, so you can do it while stomping or rezzing, and it has a pretty short cooldown with 20 seconds, and you can blow it up again to daze, which can interrupt opponents when they're rezzing or stomping. And since this build only has 2 long cooldown CCs with 45 seconds and 24 seconds, this can really save your teammate if someone's stomping without stab and you don't have any other CCs up. Alright, so let's get into the actual hammer skills themselves, which are pretty new, so I'll go over each one of them in depth. So the auto attack is actually pretty good to use when all your cooldowns are down. It contests the Elixir Tranquilizer Dart, which is also pretty good, but you'll just have to decide which one's more useful to you. From a weakness that this gives is pretty useful, and it does pretty good damage when it crits. But the hammer auto attack grants might and vuln. So it goes might, vuln, might and vuln for the chain. And it gives pretty substantial amount of might, but it does pretty good damage by itself. So if you're not doing it for the might, you could do it just for the damage. Next we got Electro Whirl. This skill is basically your primary damaging skill along with 3. And something to keep in mind is that it also reflects projectiles. So when you see a Dragon Hunter charging up True Shot, you can just use Electro Whirl and it will reflect the True Shot. Something to keep in mind is that it does have a pretty long cast time, relatively long, so you can't do it at like the last second when you see it. You have to do it probably at the same time they start casting True Shot. But otherwise, it does a lot of damage, and it's just a good skill to use off cooldown, unless you're of course saving it for reflections. Next, we got Rocket Charge, which is the sort of famous skill, I guess, of the Scrapper. So it gives you evasion frames, and it's also 3 leap finishers. So something to note about the evasion frames, it's not actually like so it says a 1 second and 3/4 second cast time, and it says 1 second evade. That's because in between each evade, when you land, you lose your evasion frames. So your opponent could interrupt you between your leaps and stop the entire channel completely. Also, it gives 3 different leap finishers. So you get 3 dazing strikes, or 3 weakness strikes, or 3 heals when you do it through a water field. So that's always really good to keep in mind. And on top of that, it does a lot of damage on a pretty short cooldown. Something else to note, it's actually pretty good mobility, but the aftercast is pretty long, so to get rid of the aftercast, you can cast it, and then swap kits after or right before you use your last swing. So you get rid of the aftercast completely. Something to keep in mind about Rocket Leap, this won't apply to a lot of you, but for me, I get really bad ping, as you can see, 500. And sometimes it doesn't go completely straight when you have bad ping. It like switches side to side. That's really annoying. So if you have bad ping, you probably don't want to use that for mobility. Something else to do with Rocket Charge is that it'll provide a lot of healing when you need it. So there's 2 ways to use Rocket Charge as a way to heal. There's using Regeneration Mist and Healing Turret. So if your Healing Turret's not up and you need the extra heal, you can pop your F1 ability and leap through it, and you'll get 2 heal finishers from it, which I think might be around like 2.5k, 3k healing, which is really good if you need that burst heal. Otherwise, you can use Healing Turret for a full 3 if ping doesn't wreck you and ruin your water field, but you get the message. Just use your Healing Turret, and I think it works even after you detonate it, but the window is kind of small if you detonate it, but you get 3 full heal finishers from it. Alright, let's try this again. So you can use your Healing Turret. There you go, ping, thank you. And you can get 3 healing finishers along with the blast, which can probably heal you up half your health, 3/4 of your health, along with maybe like another healing blast with F1 and your acid bomb. Next skill, we got the Shock Shield, which applies a lot of vuln, but more importantly is a block of 2 seconds. So this skill you can either use for damage, because it does do a lot of damage, as you can see, and it also blocks for 2 seconds. So it's just a really good skill in general. You might want to save it for defensive purposes, but you can also use it if you're trying to kill an opponent really fast because it does contribute a pretty good amount of burst damage, especially with the Vuln stacking. Alright, so last we got Thunderclap, which is a 21-second cooldown skill on a 3-4 second cast time. And basically, it stuns on first hit and provides AoE pulsing damage and a lightning field as well. So something you see often is Thunderclap into a Rocket Charge for 3 dazing strikes, and unless they have stab, it basically triples your opponent so that they can't do anything for a full, like, say, 2 seconds or 3 seconds, so maybe your teammate can help come and burst them down during that time period. It does pretty substantial damage, like around 1k per tick if it crits, like there, 1k, especially if you have might going on you. And something else to note that's really big is that it's a 1200 range, and with this build you don't really have that much range, so that Thunderclap can mean the difference between full capping a point, decapping a point, or saving an already capped point. So if you see your opponent running towards your already capped node and you don't want them to decap, you can stop them from really far away and catch up to them with all your mobility skills. Alright, so now I'll go over Function Gyro. The Function Gyro basically allows you to either stomp or res from a far distance. So even though I'm pretty far away from the thief, I can send it to stomp the thief, and when it finishes, it'll grant me super speed, and when I use it, it'll also grant both of us stab. So it's basically like a free stomp or res unless it gets destroyed. Alright, so the other capability of the Function Gyro is to res teammates. So in actual fight, you find that it might be kind of hard to target your teammate. Like, let's say my teammate went down, I can't really target him. I could target him by using this bar up top, which is most likely the best option you have. So let's say I was coming up to him from a far distance, and I couldn't really make out which one was which. So I could just click on his name up there, or here's a live demonstration. If Function Gyro was up, I would be able to res him, but it's not up, so I can't res him. But yeah, you can just use this as a way to target your teammates. So while there isn't really a rotation for damage with Scrapper, you sort of want to be using your most damaging skills off cooldown, unless you're saving them for specific things. Like, you know there's going to be a burst coming, so you want to save those evasion frames. You know there's going to be a big burst coming, so you want to save those blocks. Or you know that there's Dragon Hunters coming after you, so you want to save the reflex. Otherwise, you can just do whatever you want, because Scrapper is pretty face rolly. And then one of the reasons why I've been using it so much is because it's face rolly, and since you can see my bad ping, it sort of carries me through ring matches all the way up to Ruby, which is pretty bad, but whatever. It's still fun to play. It does its job, and it's just a good build in general. Alright, so let's go in depth with the Elixir Gun. So the Elixir Gun is also a really big source of damage because while the Electro world is on a pretty short cooldown, everything else is on a relatively long cooldown, and you don't really want to be spamming your auto attack for, say, like 10 seconds while you're waiting Rocket Charge to come back up. So that's where Elixir Gun comes in. So as I mentioned before, Tranquilizer Dart does do pretty good damage, and the weakness that it gives is pretty good. Something to keep in mind is that it does decrease endurance regeneration. So if there's like a Mesmer dodging a lot or a Thief dodging a lot, this can really slow them down. Next, a skill that wasn't really viable before, I tend to use it a lot because it's pretty good damage. It does about 1k on crit, and if there's a lot of opponents, it bounces around. As you saw, like, it went towards that golem, but it didn't hit because he was too far away. Next, we have Fumigate. It goes through walls. It doesn't really do that much damage, but the poison that it does is kind of useful. But something else to note is that if you spray it in a team fight, it cleanses condies for your friends. That's pretty good if they're being Condi bombed. Next, we got the Acid Bomb, which is super good. Not only does it provide HGH might, it also does a lot of damage over a long period of time. And the other amazing part of the skill is that it's unblockable. So those revs that have Crystal Hibernation, or the Staff 3 block, or Mesmers that use Shield 4, you can just drop one of these and it goes through all of that, and it can really pressure them to come out of the block, which then you can follow up on with like a rocket charge or something. Last, we got Super Elixir. While the light field isn't that good, the fact that it drops 2 Condis is already amazing. So, 2 main Condis of Rev are Torment and Burn. So let's say they have like 5 stacks of Burning and 10 stacks of Torment. One Super Elixir will just cleanse both of them, and you can just continue on with the fight while they've probably used up a lot of their energy. So, to go in more detail with Slick Shoes, there's a lot of ways you could use it, but the primary way that you'll see most engineers using it is an on-point CC. So what you can do is activate it and run circles around your opponent while spamming moves, and it'll shut them down for a period of time, which will help you land some of your say like blob shot, which is pretty hard to land regularly, but using that will help you land stuff like that easier. Another thing you could do is, if you're disengaging, you can use it as a way to disengage, or if you're trying to backcap and they see you, you can use it as a way to slow them down if they have no ways of blinking past it. Or you can use it to surround a down body so they can't come and res, or surround one of your teammates' body so they can't stomp. So Slick Shoes is just really good to have, and manage its cooldown wisely, because you'll never know when you're going to need it. The last thing I'm going to be talking to you guys about is the Sneak Gyro, or the Stealth Gyro. And this is a really crazy utility skill, and if used correctly, it can really put the engineer in a really good spot in terms of team support and decapping points. So, in terms of decapping points, it gives on-demand stealth, but the bad part is that anyone who knows what they're doing will see the Sneak Gyro coming towards their point, and they'll know that there's an NG with it that is trying to decap. So generally, if you're leaving a mid-fight and you don't want anyone to notice you, you can just pop this and destroy it, and just run off as fast as you can with maybe like super speed, and usually they don't notice you. And you can just decap their point, or even full cap it. Like I said earlier, you can also detonate it for that daze to interrupt stuff if you don't have an interrupt. And the other capability it has is to clutch stealth, I guess you could call it, your allies when they're being stomped. So if you're solo queuing in ranked and your ally's down, they're not going to know that you have a Sneak Gyro up. You can res them with your function gyro and yourself, and right before they get stomped, you can activate Sneak Gyro to make sure that they don't reveal themselves. And it's just a good way to ensure the res, even if you don't have good communication. It's also good for stomping purposes. If there's like a ranger, you can pop that and stomp, and they can't do anything about it. Alright, so I think I've covered most of the basics of this build, but of course with most builds, you'll only become good at it with a lot of practice. But this build is pretty easy to use, but some of those cool nuances that I talked about earlier, like the Sneak Gyro, Function Gyro, Slick Shooters, that only come with practice and experience. But I tell you guys the basics, and you can go and have fun with this build in ranked. And yeah, so if you ever want to see gameplay of this build, you can catch my stream, twitch.tv/legendofbagel, drop a follow. But yeah, I'm going to be putting out more meta build guides, so if you want to see those, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.